from Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Here's what's ahead today from the Kansas Forest Service here at K-State. Mark Neely will talk about rural wildfire incidents in Kansas this past year and how the response to wildfires has improved under that new mutual aid compact with surrounding states. Mark will also talk about taking steps now to protect your rural property from wildfires during this fall and winter. Then Shelby Varner visits with Kansas FFA State President Ashley Chandler and State Vice President Rachel Sebesta as they'll reflect on their experiences at the just concluded 2021 National FFA Convention. And K-State's Gus Vander Hoeven awaits with another Stop, Look, and Listen. All that here on Agriculture Today. Thanks once again for tuning in for another Agriculture Today. We've over from the Kansas Forest Service here at Kansas State University, the State Fire Management Officer with the service, Mark Neely, for we are entering once again another wildfire season here in the state of Kansas. As it's cooled off considerably, it'll be drier, and we'll have a fuel load out there in our rural areas of the state. And we do want to look to that and what folks might want to do to protect their property in the case of wildfire, Mark. But let's first recap the year 2021 as far as Kansas wildfires, maybe compared to recent years. How would you characterize it?
Well, thank you for having me here today, Eric. It's always a joy to come on and talk about this subject. Last year, we had a busy fire season. What's curious is the occurrence isn't always as high, but the size and the destructive nature of the fires are increasing. So we may not be having as many of those fires, the little ones that the departments are running, but the ones we are getting seem to just start getting larger and larger. I think the most unique thing about last year's fire season was the location. Many times it seems to the south central, southwest, and northwest where it's more arid and the relative humidity in the wind goes down and the winds can really come up, and we get some difficult terrain out there. But this past year, we had a lot of fires up here in the Northeast. The majority of state-assisted fires were here in the Northeast. We had a couple towns that we had to evacuate. The Manhattan Airport was used multiple times as a tanker base for Tanker 95 for aerial operations. That was the most unique thing. Normally, those fires we do have out west. Kansas Forest Service assisted a lot. Still, with even those assistants from us and Kansas Division of Emergency Management, the local fire departments put out the vast majority, 98% of these things. Mm-hmm. And so we just want to continually help them. If they need us, we'll be there. The aviation has been a really big success. It's about 24 months of using aviation really heavily in the state, and folks just being aware of that resource can call and get it, what we always say, call early. We can always turn the plane around. It just still takes some time to get him fueled up, and then obviously flight time to the fire. So if you see structures that's going to be involved that you need additional help, or it's in country that is very hard to get to fight the fire, give us a call. Give Kansas Division of Emergency Management a call, and we'll get the resources there that you need.
It's really been an asset, that air tanker. Yeah. We can't overstate that whatsoever. You mentioned the scale and scope of these fires. Can you point to any one thing or collection of things that has lent to these maybe fewer in number but larger fire outbreaks?
Yeah, I would say, particularly back east here on eastern Kansas, land management, even ownership patterns, some vacant ownerships, and then vacant ownership changes land management practices. People are sometimes buying property for just hunting, and then they let it get a little bit woolly, and that lends to maybe some species that, particularly cedars, that kind of prohibit fire suppression. Last year, we did have a warmer, drier winter. Everybody remembers those 2 weeks in February that we had winter, but that was just 2 weeks.
Right.
The rest of the time, we were warm and dry. Unfortunately, we're kind of lining up again for that this year also. It takes proper land management. Talk to your extension agents, talk to our foresters, talk to our fire guys. If you're buying property for the first time, to see how you should properly manage those acres and the way that you want to, that's also fire-wise and protective of your property. But one of the worst things we can do is just buy the property and let it go.
Right.
And I think a lot of landowners around you would appreciate a little property management too.
Want to visit a little more about the outlook for this fall and winter, and maybe a few of those things that rural dwellers can do to protect their property. But do want to slip this in. It's been a few years now since the state of Kansas, the Kansas Forest Service, Emergency Management Division as well, have entered into cooperative agreements, formal agreements for fire response with neighboring states. How much of a boon has that been, Mark, to the ability of the state of Kansas and our legions of firefighters out there to respond to outbreaks?
Yeah. So the Great Plains Interstate Fire Compact, we entered into 2017, 2018 through legislation. In the past 2 years, we've used it pretty extensively. There was a time Oklahoma was gifting us another fire, but we were able to compact resources down onto their side of the border, and we kept it there. And that's our main goal is, really get these fires small. Once they get big and multi-day, it's terrible. That mechanism then allows us to throw as much stuff at the fire as we can to keep it small and local. This past year was pretty neat. We brought in a strike team of engines. If you recall, I said the weather pattern looked like South Central, so in all my infinite wisdom, we brought resources and put them in South Central, and then Northeast Kansas got hit with fires, so didn't look too bright there. But it was good because we could remove some resources out of an area and know that we still had those compacts there, so we didn't create a vacuum in part of the state when other resources were helping neighboring counties out. So we've brought folks in. We've gone out. We've gone, like I said, down to Oklahoma. And then this past summer, Nebraska had a fire, the Post Fire. And we sent a task force of engines, a task force leader, and some tenders up to northwest Nebraska to fight fires. And that was really neat because it was some volunteer departments out of Mitchell, Cloud, and Ottawa. We had departments out of Leavenworth County, Douglas, and Johnson County, and they all met up and drove up there and fought fire for a few days and came back. And these are just our regular firefighter neighbors, volunteer firefighters that help out around town, but here they are through the compact up in northwest Nebraska helping out those communities in their times of need. So it's been a big help, both giving and receiving. It's a simplified process that we can get resources there or here in a quick phone call is all it takes now.
Now, this fall and winter, we have a fuel load out there, maybe, depending on where you are, comparable to this past year. How are you seeing it, Mark?
The fuel. I'm glad you brought up fuel load. That's what's really driving our outlook right now. We are lining up for some of the same weather patterns as last year. I do think we have a higher fuel load than we did last year. So those things don't mix well for an inactive season, so we're expecting a pretty active fire season. Here on a more recent trend, we see a kind of a secondary season, not as long this fall. We start seeing stuff happening right around now until December, which, the good Lord then gives us Christmas off and the holidays, and then it starts picking back up in January. So I do appreciate that. And we're seeing it right now. The growing season index is dropping. Out west where we've had some freeze, it's dropping drastically. Back here east, it's gradually dropping. Once we get a freeze, we'll see it drop off. And normally after one of those hard freezes, about 10 days afterwards, without fail, it seems like we have a wind event. And we can pick up one or two large-scale fires in the state, and hopefully it stays at one or two. But fire departments, and landowners just need to be aware that as soon as we get that frost, that grass goes into its dormant season, it desiccates. The fuel moisture that was present in it is gone. Everything's ready to burn. Once the leaves fall, prior to a snowpack, the leaves are readily to burn because nothing's packing them down and so there's a lot of oxygen still between those leaves, so fire will carry right across a 2-foot deep leaf bed pretty easily.
plenty out there to burn. So folks need to be on full alert and obviously be cautious. But there are other things that homeowners and others can do to protect their property. Fire breaks could be part of that, and some other ideas too, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have little eddy corners in your house that just collect leaves. You want to clean those out. Check your gutters. Get those ignitable materials away from your house. Firewood. Lots of folks like to stack their wood right up to their house. I get it. But that's another bed for a firebrand to land on, and it's a pretty good fuel load that then starts your house on fire. So look for those opportunities just to move those ignitable materials away from your home or put them somewhere safe. Then as we move out, obviously keeping your yard tidy and lower the height of the vegetation, and that'll lower the flame links. And then around your properties, and I love see it more and more, but you can see along some fence lines, people that mow. That's a good fire break, especially if you windrow those and bale them somehow. Just when you mow a 6-foot grass, that grass is still sitting there and still can burn. And then more and more, we're seeing a lot of folks along the roads and highways even haying those right-of-ways, and that's awesome. That reduces so much fuel load, because when you add in that swath of ground that they hay to the road and then the other side of the road that they swap, that's a pretty large fuel break now for some of our firebrands to have to carry and stay hot to land in a fuel bed for igniting material.
Here's hoping for a smooth transition into winter and then spring with a minimum of wildfires out there, Mark.
Right. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you for coming over. Always appreciate the visit. He's the State Fire Management Officer with the Kansas Forest Service here at Kansas State University. A few moments there with Mark Neely on This Agriculture Today.
This is Agriculture Today. I'm Shelby Varner. The 94th National FFA Convention just recently took place October 27th through the 30th. Today we're with Kansas FFA State President Ashley Chandler from the Neely chapter and Kansas FFA State Vice President Rachel Sebesta from the Ellsworth chapter. This convention just took place. What were some of the events that happened there?
Well, we were certainly busy during National FFA Convention because as state officers at Kansas, we serve as the official delegates for the National FFA. And there's 475 delegates in total, and basically we run 6 committees about topics that we find need to be improved or need to be discussed within the FFA. That started back in July at State Officer Summit. Both Ashley and I served as leadership delegates on the committees, so we basically ran the committees. And then after all the committee work was done, we went into a huge business session with all 475 official delegates, ran through all the committee reports, made some amendments. We got to see some par law in action on a large scale, which is really cool. And then we got to attend every session also as delegates. We had seats on the floor, so we were right in the middle of all the action.
The sessions are probably what people normally think of when they think of National FFA Convention. The huge sea of blue jackets, all excited to watch the national officers do their thing on the stage and people accept awards. I know as a member that was one of my favorite parts. We got to see some pretty exciting speakers while we were there during those sessions. Miss Courtney Dehoff, a Kansas native, was the keynote speaker for the opening session on both Wednesday night and Thursday morning. And wow, her message was powerful. She talked all about finding your place in agriculture or just in life and really being yourself when you find that place. So I found that really inspiring. In addition to that, we heard words of wisdom from all 6 of our national officers through their retiring addresses, which was probably my favorite part of the whole entire experience, was getting to hear the fantastic wisdom that they had to share with us.
What is something that you find beneficial as you look on into the future?
I think one of my favorite parts of National Convention is always getting to interact with members and advisors from your home state, from other states, getting to learn more about what FFA can look like in different parts of the country or even across the state of Kansas. I know I was absolutely overjoyed when I got to see another Kansas jacket walking around, especially when I got to have a cool conversation with someone. also wearing a blue jacket, just about the things that they do. So definitely those connections moving forward out of National Convention is really valuable.
There's also a huge opportunity for personal growth at National Convention. A lot of people think about like the huge career fair and the giant expo and all the free things, which are all great, but there's also a bunch of workshops run by really passionate and dedicated national staff, past state officers. We had a couple from Kansas this year also help out with those workshops. And another thing I think that's really falls under that personal growth category is listening to those national officers, RAs. Sometimes even as a state officer, you find yourself needing to be reminded of some key messages that they hold. I know a couple of them, there wasn't a dry eye in the whole stadium. Those messages really hit deep, and it just remind you why you're doing this and some things you need to focus on throughout your year.
Continuing to focus on supporting the community, there were service projects that also took place at convention. What were those?
Those are the National Days of Service. We actually are setting up something kind of similar in Kansas called the Week of Service that falls during Dead Week, which would be the week of December 6th. And the National Days of Service is basically you can sign up and go throughout Indianapolis and help out with different service projects. For the state officers, we did a one at White River State Park where we helped clean up the river flood area, a native wildlife section for wildlife in the area and for pollinators. We cut out some like invasive species of trees, dug up some thistles, which we don't know how well that's going to work out because they're probably going to come back. But it was really nice to have a chance to give back to Indy and thank them for letting us have our convention here this year, especially with COVID and everything that's happening.
It was pretty powerful to get to go out in the community. I know there were some other service projects that went on that we weren't able to participate in, but what a cool opportunity to give back alongside other people from all over the nation who are also interested in giving back to the same organization.
What was the atmosphere of the convention?
It was electric. It was so cool to have so many students back together, better than ever, super excited. For more students than normal, this was their first ever national convention, which is so cool. I still remember my first national convention a few years ago and how incredible that experience was, how eye-opening that experience was. And so the feeling of being there surrounded by the Blue Jackets after being separated for such a long time, absolutely amazing and irreplaceable.
I couldn't have said it better, Ashley. I really couldn't have.
So a lot of great things happening, electric atmosphere. What were some great things Kansas people were doing?
We are so proud of all of our Kansas peeps, our Kansas friends who worked super hard to compete to even reach the national level and then go on to have success at the national level. It's not easy to get to that level, and we are so proud of the success that all of our students had. To highlight a few of our winners, we'd like to highlight the National Chapter Award, the Model of Excellence. Ellsworth FFA from the North Central District was a finalist for the Model of Excellence, which is a really, really cool deal. Additionally, in the Growing Leaders areas of the National Chapter, our Kansas City was a finalist for the Growing Leaders Division. So that's pretty cool that their chapters, even through COVID, were able to conduct some pretty fantastic events. Additionally, we'd like to highlight some of our proficiency finalists. Big shout out to Nathan Holt, Smalley McClure, Kylie March, and Derek Larison for being finalists in their proficiency areas. Proficiency areas are related to a student supervised agricultural experience, or SAE, which is the project that they conduct outside of regular class hours. So we're super proud of them for their work that they did going above and beyond outside the classroom that helped them reach that level. We'd also like to highlight, just briefly, some of the other contests, events, and things that were competed in at National Convention. We'd like to give a huge congratulations to all of the CDE and LDE participants and finalists from Kansas. We know they worked super hard to get to that point, and we'd love to give them a shout out here. Additionally, the Agri-Science Fair, a traditional science fair with an agriculture-based twist, is a really cool program that we do quite a bit of in Kansas, so we're really proud of our finalists in that area as well. A long-time tradition is the band and chorus at the National FFA Convention. And we had a few participants partake in both the band and the chorus, so we're very proud of them. Additionally, we'd love to extend our congratulations to the American degree recipients, which is the highest degree a student can receive in the FFA organization. Less than 1% of all FFA members reach the highest degree, so we're really proud of the students who worked hard to achieve that. And finally, the honorary American degree that is awarded to supporters, ag teachers, state staff. We had several recipients from Kansas who were honored for their lifetime dedication to National FFA and the success of our program.
What would you tell people who are thinking about attending, hopefully, the 95th National FFA Convention? What would your words say to go do it?
I would just say to go for it. I know a lot of students are really concerned with traveling away from home for the very first time, traveling out of state for the first time. It's a huge distance to Indy. It's about a 12-hour drive from a lot of places in Kansas. And I would just like to highlight the enormous potential for growth, and not even just growth, but getting to see agriculture and FFA on a national scale. Like Ashley, I too remember my very first national convention, and I remember stepping out on the street on our way to then Bankers Life Fieldhouse. It's now Gainbridge, and being absolutely overwhelmed with the amount of people who are wearing the exact same jacket as me. Different words on it, but still the same jacket. I think it really shows a testament. We have over 735,000 FFA members across the nation. 55,000 showed up to the convention, and if I think about how overwhelming that number was, if I saw a 735,000 in person, I'd probably cry or something, because just the overwhelmingness of how broad agriculture and how broad FFA is as a program and as an organization is probably my main reason for attending National Convention every single year and wanting to go.
Absolutely, Rachel. I could not agree more. I really appreciated that you highlighted getting to learn about agriculture in all sorts of different areas of the U.S. There's some really cool tours that are available within driving distance of Indianapolis, in St. Louis, along the way. And those were some of my favorite memories as a chapter member attending National Convention, where the stops along the way where we got to tour apple orchards, fish farms, you name it, it was there. And so I would encourage anyone who's interested in agriculture or leadership development to really spread your wings and go for it, because you'll never know what you might come across.
That was Kansas FFA State President Ashley Chandler and Vice President Rachel Sebesta, and to share a little bit about what happened at the 94th National FFA Convention. I'm Shelby Varner, and we will be back on Agriculture Today.
This is Agriculture Today. Stop, look, and listen.
It was a service, not only a celebration of life.
That's Gus Vanderhoeven of Kansas State University with comment on life in rural Kansas.
Last week I went to a funeral service of an acquaintance of mine. It was actually her husband, who we knew. I searched my wardrobe to dress appropriately, expecting a more traditional service. And I was correct. It was a service, not only a celebration of life. Personally, I have absolutely no problem to celebrate a life at a funeral. The church was filled, which speaks for the place the couple and she had in our community. As often is the case, there was a summary of the activities and service organizations the deceased had been part of. She had a lot of energy, besides being a mother. I chuckled when Anneke sighed a wow. Mind you, Anneke has no reason to sigh. She does and has done her part in her life, besides being a fantastic mother to our 5 children and all the grandchildren, and others who came dropping in. We arrived in time to find a seat quietly listening to the organ music. I noticed how full the church was. I saw people I knew. Most people wore darker clothes, being the older generation. As I observed them and recognized friends and people, it dawned on me that in a few more years, many of them will have had their own funeral service or celebration of life. I also looked at Anneke and myself. At our age, we too are candidates. It's not a somber thought, and one better gets used to it. I laughed at my oldest son, who has been involved and busy with a recent death in his wife's family. Guido sent me a questionnaire with interesting questions. What do you want when you're dead? Right now, I've mislaid my copy, but Anneke has started to fill in some of the answers. One question was, what flowers do you want? I noticed she wrote down tulips. The funeral service was a service with old hymns, familiar to old people. They were hymns of faith. The service opened with a bagpiper playing Amazing Grace. That must have been a throwback to the old country and ancestors. The musician did not wear a kilt, so I can't say what the clan was which came over. That moment made me wonder and understand Anneke's choice of tulips. I do not know how I will pull that off. Have not died yet. I do not know. I want it to be simple, as simple can be. When reflecting on that aspect, my youngest daughter said, "Funerals are not for the dead, Papa. They're for family and friends." I have to think about that one. Of course, I won't be around. I can't speak up. It's fine. Keep it simple. But talking about hope and trust, I saw a field of sprouting wheat against the dark earth in the early morning sunrise the other day. I don't think that a sprouting wheat field has ever before given me such a jolt, comfort, and message of knowing.
Gus Vander Hoeven of Kansas State University with his weekly commentary on life in rural Kansas. Our time's away once more. We appreciate you tuning in and welcome you back here tomorrow, this same time. Until then, and for Shelby Varner, Eric Atkinson here, this has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.